the procedural bylaw, any questions that committee members might have about those things. And if Arlene can give a high-level overview, then everyone can have a chance to sort of read through those documents. If you have a question, by all means, email us, give us a call, or we can discuss it at our next meeting. So I will share screen now. Okay, and I have a dual screen here, so I still have all your faces in front of me. So by all means, if you have a question, if you'd like me to pause, just put your hand up and I'm happy to do so. So as I say, this is the beginning of a secondary plan development for the Bayfield settlement area.
Denise, before you go too much further, I'd like to just ask if we're defining parameters, and I understand that this is a Blue Water project, but I find with Huron County planning people that they define Bayfield as the 1,100–1,200 population that's here, and they ignore the fact that, well, potentially there's 200 to 300 units going in the Salvation Army camp. You've got population centers like Paul Bunyan, the Bayfield News, Wildwood, Pine Lake, all of them consider themselves to be Bayfield and use the Bayfield infrastructure. So if you're going to limit the settlement area plan, I would suggest you're probably excluding about 5,000 citizens that claim to be from Bayfield. Although they don't contribute tax-wise to Bayfield, they consider themselves Bayfield. I'll never forget standing at Clangraiger Square at a Christmas parade with a whole bunch of people standing beside me with signs about the arena, passionate about the arena. I asked them where they lived. They lived in Central Huron.
Denise, this is Gary Davidson. I agree with the gentleman, but could the administrator turn on the raise hands function so that we just don't have to butt in on each other? Like Zoom has a raise hand function. If you want to ask a question, you click it and then you go into a queue.
Sure. Arlene, are you able to turn that on?
No, I am not.
Okay, let me just take a look here.
Well, that answers that question.
Okay, 1 second.
So I don't have the version that has, oh, I do. There's Kim Loback raised her hand.
Yeah,
So,
if you go, I was just poking around. If you go into the participants at the bottom
yes.
and find yourself, you should be able to raise your hand if there's, I don't know how that appears on the administrator side though.
Oh, right.
So anyone then can raise their own hand, correct?
Yeah, as long as that works for
It's
the
not
admin side being able to see it.
It's not showing up on my screen.
No. Kim, can you click it again for a second just so I can see what comes up for me? Oh, okay, yeah, I see it there. So if people do want to do that, I can certainly pause. It would be nicer to see it on screen, and we can certainly look into that for next time to see if we need to use maybe a Zoom webinar function wherein we're all panel participants, and I think then we have more abilities to do that. Okay, so to answer Dave's question, not really a question, but just to point out, the right hand side of your screen, you're going to see an outline of the Bayfield project area, as it were, and you'll see that certainly Paul Bunyan is included. Some of the so by the river is included. Some of the campgrounds are. Some will be just outside of this picture. I believe this will be the location of Wildwood here. So some of them will be included within our formal project area. Now, the project area has been loosely defined as what's currently designated as urban within the Bayfield settlement area. But if this committee would like to take a look at the boundaries of the study area, that would be perfectly appropriate. And just to recognize the difference between areas that are currently designated for urban development versus areas which are outside that urban development boundary, and what would be the difference of recommendations, for example, as we look forward to put some of those policies into the Blue Water Official Plan. So happy to take a look at the study area, Dave.
So, okay.
Okay. So I am going to move on then. I do have hands up here. So if anyone is just sitting on the side of my screen, so if anyone has questions, please let me know. Okay.
Sorry, just one comment, Denise. It's a GPS staff iPad who's
Yes.
causing all the background noise.
Yeah, Abby,
So
if we could.
would they please mute themselves?
Okay, there we go.
Okay, there we go. Okay. So we wanted to start off with just a high-level discussion of what is a secondary plan. And this is a tool within planning that's used to help understand opportunities and to address issues within a specific geographic area. So many of you will be familiar with the land use planning system. I know Gary Davidson, for example, is our first director of planning here within Huron County, and many others on the screen today have participated in many different committees over the years. So I know we're all coming at this with a degree of experience, but just to give an overview, we do have that more of a high-level general direction that's provided within provincial policy, coming through the county official plan, and then the Blue Water Official Plan. So in 2015, we had the last 5-year review of the Blue Water Official Plan. I was involved in that project and understood at that time that there was a desire for a more detailed direction with regards to change in Bayfield. We did make some additions within that official plan in an attempt to address the concerns of the community, but it was ultimately decided that a secondary plan was truly needed in this case. So again, we have the framework provided by the official plan, but a secondary plan is an opportunity to do a bit of a deeper dive. The other thing a secondary plan can do is it provides an opportunity to promote consistency and a certain vision in new and developing areas in such a way that's compatible with our existing development. So when we think of Bayfield, the older area Bayfield, some people like to call it Old Bayfield, the original downtown core area and surrounding residential areas have a certain character. As we move south through the village, you can see that character has changed over time, and towards the southern boundary of the existing settlement area, we have a number of large undeveloped parcels which are designated primarily for residential development. We do have some as well on Highway 21 that would be appropriate and designated for highway commercial. So those might be some of the areas where we want to think about how does our existing framework provide direction, and where might we like to be a bit more detailed and a bit more focused so that the resulting development meets the desires of the residents of Bayfield. So before I get too far, I thought we'd talk a little bit about why now. And so we did talk a bit about that 2015 official plan 5-year review, but the other dynamic that has been going on within the village is that we're having an expansion to the wastewater treatment plant. Since about 2011, there has not been able to be any new development approved in Bayfield because there's not reserve capacity, is what it's called, at the wastewater treatment plant. So what that means is that development which already was approved and had that reserve capacity allocated has been allowed to proceed, but any new development has been told, you'll have to wait basically until the plant is expanded and there's more capacity. So the municipality of Blue Water engaged BM Ross and Associates to undertake the EA, the approvals process for the expansion to the wastewater treatment plant. And there's public meetings ongoing actually into this fall. So what we have is a timeline now for the eventual expansion of that plant, at which point we do anticipate that there will be an increased interest in development in Bayfield. I can certainly say, as being the planner for Blue Water in the past few years, there's certainly a level of interest from the development community in Bayfield, but they've been held off, so to speak, by the capacity issue. So by doing a secondary plan now, I think it's an incredibly worthwhile investment in terms of the community's time and thinking about some of these issues and providing more detailed direction. By doing so, the development community is going to have a much clearer understanding of what the community's objectives and priorities are for new development. At the same time, the community can move forward with the confidence that our planning framework is going to result in development which meets the community's goals and vision, and it meets the needs of current and future residents. So again, a very well-timed initiative. The wastewater treatment plant, as we know, is still going through final public meetings for the EA. It will take time, you know, to do detailed design, to tender it out. They have to, you know, obviously construct the plant. So we're still a couple years away from that. So I think it's, again, we have great timing to put the secondary plan in place and provide that really clear direction. So what is the process for a secondary plan? I'll be honest, there's no prescriptive rules in terms of how you do a secondary plan. There's some good guidance in terms of things that have been done and things that have worked well. So this is our proposal. And when I say our, I mean mine, in speaking with colleagues of mine at the planning department and also at the municipality of Blue Water. But I'm very open to shifts and adjustments as the Citizen Advisory Committee would so wish. So the process is going to begin with a project launch. We're going to be developing a background report, which obviously provides an overview of various elements within the community, looking at an inventory of parks, for example, an inventory of public art, looking from a stats perspective. How have the demographics in Bayfield changed over the past 20 years? Who's in our community today, and who do we anticipate will be in our community in another 20 years? How do we get ready for them in terms of the built form? We're going to do public consultation, and this will be happening throughout the process. We're going to be utilizing a program called Bang the Table, and it's an opportunity you can put up questions, have discussion with the community, and then you can probe, you can ask further questions. There'll be an iterative sort of process of being able to really make sure that we understand what the community is providing feedback on. There will be a policy development piece, which is us actually providing that detailed direction for various components. We'll have an architecture and urban design component, which the municipality has provided a budget of $15,000 for. Earlier this year, I did issue an RFP before COVID sort of happened, and we were able to select a consultant. So I can speak about that a little bit more. We're going to do draft document review with both the community and obviously this committee. There will be some final discussions in trying to come to our final recommendations for Blue Water Council. We'll be taking the recommendations and the plan forward for approval, and then we're going to initiate a series of recommendations that I anticipate will come out of this plan. And we'll also include approval at the county council level as this plan is formally adopted within the Bayfield or the Blue Water official plan framework. So just to give you a sense of our timeline, at this point, I'm anticipating that we would be able to wrap the process in a little less than a year. Initially, I hadn't thought we would need a year to do it, but given that public health protocols have moved us exclusively online, we may be able to move through it a bit quicker. Now, again, I want to stress that we will take as much time as needed to make sure that we reach resolution on as many items and issues as we can. But this is a sort of a draft timeline to give you a sense of how long you're in this for. So governance, it's a really important thing to discuss. You know, ultimately, all final decisions will be made by Blue Water Council and then ultimately County Council, as it is their approval authority for the local official plan. But the Citizen Advisory Committee has an incredibly important role in this process, in that you are steering the direction and making sure that at the end of the day, this document takes into consideration the wide spectrum of perspectives and issues that we have in Bayfield. You are the experts on Bayfield, very much more so than I. And so I am relying on you to make sure that we are adequately covering off the issues that you see as pressing. If there are issues which do not find a home within the secondary plan, we can certainly help to direct how they can be better developed or better addressed. An example I would give of that would be short-term rentals, let's say. So Airbnb, short-term rentals, I know as people have rented out cottages in Bayfield for years. However, the rate at which that is happening might be of concern to some people. A short-term rental issue could be discussed within the secondary plan process, but ultimately it would require a bylaw of council to actually address that. So that's one of the recommendations I speak of, is that we might have a lot of direction from the community about how they feel about short-term rentals, and we could then recommend to the council that the creation and the consideration of a short-term rentals bylaw would be an appropriate outcome of the Bayfield secondary plan process. That's just an example. This committee is anticipated to meet 6 times over the course of the year. We'll probably do the 2 initial meetings kind of closer together, and then as the year goes on, I will space them out. They will always be on a Tuesday night, 7 to 9, and we will book them plenty in advance so we have no conflicts moving forward. In terms of staff's role, we're assigned to help coordinate this process and provide professional opinions on policy options that are identified throughout the course of the discussions. So again, want to very much make it clear that this Citizen Advisory Committee is very much as a key role in helping to steer this conversation moving forward. So again, in terms of your tech, so that's sort of the governance structure, what are you actually going to be doing? So we're asking you to represent really broad community interests and generally to champion the plan as you're within Bayfield. So if you hear someone talking about it or they have questions, you try to act as a bit of an ambassador and explain to the degree that you're comfortable, or refer them on to staff if they have more detailed questions. Originally, I had hoped that we'd be meeting together, that we would have a chance to really have the community members such as yourselves public consultations. Unfortunately, we're not going to have that opportunity, but really important that you have the opportunity to review and provide input on how this process is done. So you'll get to get input into how we're consulting with the public. You just, for example, won't be able to be there at a public meeting at the arena like we might have had otherwise. We will be providing all feedback from the online public consultation for your review, and we are looking forward to some lively discussions as we debate that feedback and as we draw policy directions from it. And most importantly, I think it's really important that this committee help us to navigate those issues where the community doesn't have agreement, because that is likely to happen. And so it's, how can this committee help us to navigate, to sort of assess different options and ultimately provide that direction that you think is going to meet with acceptance in the community. Again, we may not always agree on everything, but we want to have something that people generally can live with moving forward. So our communication strategy, we will be relying on the project page on the municipal website. We will have social media posts, primarily on the Blue Water Facebook page, driving people to the Bang the Table site. We'll be doing regular updates in the Bayfield Breeze. And I have to say, I am always amazed and just awed at the readership of the Breeze. So I think that's a really important one, especially for some of our members, such as, I know Andre's at a distance, and we certainly have other landowners and community members who don't live in Bayfield year-round. And so want to make sure that they're kept up to date and utilizing the Breeze as one option to do so. We have been invited to do interviews on the stage. I did one to introduce the project back in January when we were looking for yourselves as the community members. Moving forward, if there's any other interviews, I would very much prefer that they were done by the committee members as opposed to staff. So we could look at an opportunity maybe for our chair and vice chair to be interviewed by Roz Elliott at the stage, and again, try to communicate what we're doing, why we're doing it, and getting folks engaged and participating online. Finally, I don't want to completely neglect the physical components. So where we have community boards and the opportunity to do some physical components within the community, we will do that as well. Obviously, just not relying on it as much given the public health situation we find ourselves in. I'm going to pause there and just ask, does anyone else have any other strategies you'd like to see us use, or any suggestions about how we can get the word out?
I was going to ask you, Denise, will you be providing a communication strategy or a Q&A for the committee members?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. Like, do you mean sort of like a frequently asked questions, Gary, or
Yeah.
what do you mean by Q&A? Yeah, okay, yes.
Questions and answers.
Yes, will do.
The answers are important.
Yes.
And the other thing I want to say, can you send us as the committee a copy of the presentation you've been giving?
Yes, be happy to. Okay, anything else there on getting the word out and working with folks primarily online as opposed to what we might have done if we had an in-person option? Okay, if anything comes up, feel free. So for those of you who watched the original sort of stage interview, or you'd heard us talk about the project, we had some sort of innovative ideas. And so this was the original public consultation strategy, just in terms of some of the ideas that we were going to do. And we were going to run a series of focus groups. We were going to lead Jane's walks on various topics throughout the village. We had some key informant interviews, broad community visioning sessions, which would have been those large, sort of workshops you may have attended before at the arena or the town hall. We had some, some interactive displays set up for the library, pop-up consultations, farmers market. We were going to hit Clan-Gregor Square, Pioneer Park. We had some sessions for kids about planning with Lego and map making. We were also going to visit the local high school and do a presentation. So that was certainly my initial vision, was that, Bayfield is a very sophisticated community, and we want to get out there and talk to people who might not normally attend these types of meetings. So that was my original design, and obviously we had to modify it for COVID-19. So this is, again, it's shifted, and again, primarily now we are going to be using an online consultation platform known as Bang the Table. When it comes out to the community, it'll be under the brand Huron County Connects, and I will be sending all of you a link to that. So we can still go ahead with the focus groups, but recognizing they will be done online in a platform such as this. The Jane's Walks, I would still very much like to do them, and they might be issue specific. So if by spring 2021, if public health protocols allow, I would like to still leave that one on the table as a maybe. We might be able to do it, we may not. The benefit of a Jane's Walk, for those of you who aren't familiar, Jane Jacobs is sort of the mother of planning, Gary, if I can call her that. So she was sort of a pioneer in planning, and in her honor, there are walks done every year, and they talk about various topics. It might be heritage, it might be talking about different architectural styles. It could be something, I've done one in Benastra about the industrial heritage that we have in post-war times. So it can be all over the board. And that's what is really great about a Jane's Walk, is if you have a specific issue, you can design a walk that physically takes people through the neighborhoods, through the kind of the back alleys, and really bring some of these concepts of planning to life. So I would very much like to do it again, fingers crossed, if we can. Key informant interviews will be conducted online. The community visioning will be done through the online platform. Unfortunately, at this time, I don't think it's realistic to have pop-up consultations in person. We can't use Lego in the sense that obviously we can't all be touching the same Lego. I suppose if people had it at home, we might still be able to do it, but I don't think it would achieve the same effect. The high school presentation, I'm still very much open to doing that if it's desired. I know the high school teachers have really had to shift gears, so I'm not sure that they're looking for anything additional this year, but still open to that. So in terms of identified stakeholder groups, which we would go out and do some focus groups with, these are the groups that I have identified, but I know there are so many in Bayfield. So Bayfield Agricultural Society, the Chamber of Commerce, the Arena Community Partners, our Historical Society and Municipal Heritage Committee, which I recognize are two separate groups, but wondered if they might be willing to form one focus group. The Bayfield Lions Club, the Ratepayers Association, Bayfield River Valley Trails, Blue Bayfield, Home for Good. As I read the list, I know I'm missing Center for the Arts.
Town Hall, Pioneer Park, Optimist Club. Oh, yeah.
And again, the goal here is to try to get sort of a sample from across the community. If these groups regularly have a meeting anyhow, the idea is that we would extend an invitation for them to participate in the consultation process. If they would like to do a focus group, then the offer is that myself and hopefully one of yourselves, the committee members, would attend their meeting virtually and have a discussion about the specific interests that their focus group would apply in terms of the secondary plan. So what is their lens? And what would they like to see in terms of their vision? So it's an offer and an invitation to provide have a bit more of a detailed discussion on a single issue. And I'm open to doing as many of these as it takes, just recognizing again, they will be this online platform.
Could I suggest that you put the library, partner it with a historical society, and have the Heritage Committee as a separate committee?
Yeah, absolutely, Gail. Thank you for that suggestion.
Don't forget all of the exercise groups that use the community center at the Arena. Before COVID, they were one of the largest in Southwestern Ontario, proportionately be the largest in Southwestern Ontario. So I would not exclude them whatsoever.
Okay, do you think that the Bayfield area Arena Community Partners, does that encompass that group, Dave?
Absolutely not. Roger Lewington would know more about who sponsors it and stuff, but no, it's not the community partners whatsoever. They are tenants of the building, supported by the Ontario government.
No, I think that Sandy Scotchmere is on both Town Hall and the Bayfield Arena partners, I'm sure, and she's involved with that. I'm sure she could arrange, if the information gets out there, she could arrange a proper meeting with those, with that avenue. Yeah. As long as the information gets to Town Hall and to the Arena partners, with maybe a little note, Denise, to include, and I don't know if it is under One Care, but to include those groups, they'll make sure that the information gets to them.
Okay.
Roger here, I'd include One Care because they encompass a whole number of programs all the way through.
Okay. And there might be groups like One Care where it would be more appropriate to do sort of a key informant interview as opposed to a focus group. So if they're involved in a lot of different aspects of community life. So that's certainly another avenue that we can discuss. Why don't I come back with a list then of everyone for whom invitations to have a focus group will be extended. And what we'll do within the invitation is we will make them aware of the Bang the Table online platform. sort of have an opportunity for them to go through and participate in the feedback generally as just community members. And then if they'd like to have a focus group, the idea is that it would be more focused on their particular area of interest. So it's the River Valley Trails. We're going to be discussing, the opportunity for further trail development within the project area. So wanting people to participate both generally, just as a resident or as a community member in Bayfield, but then also having the chance to provide that more specific lens. Okay. Okay, so I can certainly provide that back to the committee. In terms of key informants, some of the ones that I had on the list were our agency staff, so wanting to speak with partners at Ministry of Transportation. I know the development of sidewalks, for example, to the new grocery store and the LCBO and that sort of area in town has been a question. I think generally good to have the input of MTO as we talk about gateways and maybe key intersections that might see more volume when we have more development in Bayfield. BM Ross and Associates, I have them on the list because they are currently doing 2 projects within Bayfield. So the wastewater treatment plant expansion, as well as leading some of the discussions for the Main Street revitalization. There's a lot going on in Bayfield right now. I understand you guys had a signage meeting last week, and I know there's some heritage things coming up. So it's sometimes difficult to sort of understand, how do all these various pieces connect? Where do they overlap, and where are they separate? And so if there's any questions to that extent, I'm happy to sort of help navigate through that, because there is a lot going on in Bayfield right now. Local developers are someone I'd like to do some key informant interviews with to get their perspective. Young people. I had been working with Melody Pounder-Falconer in regards to attending some of the meetings with the Girl Guides and the Pathfinders. This was prior to COVID, and I'm still hoping that there might be an avenue for me to attend a meeting again virtually. Landowners of large undeveloped parcels have a vested interest, and again, our community members. Bud Robinson was going to participate on this committee and just has recently decided that due to his volunteering commitments within the village, I think they've increased due to COVID. Bud has decided that he doesn't have the time to put towards this committee in the way that he would like. Bud is a significant landowner of large undeveloped parcels in the village, and I think his perspective and other perspectives would be one that I would like to reach out and at least offer that opportunity if they're interested. Does anyone else come to mind as a key informant interview that I haven't touched maybe in the focus group list? We do have a number of very generous professionals within the village. I know Rob McCrae, local architect, had offered if he could provide any technical assistance to the committee, he would be happy to. We also have an urban designer within the community that had again offered that if she could be of help in any way, she was willing. So I think we're generally very lucky as a community to have other committee member or other community members who are willing to give of their time. So what are our deliverables from this project? First, there is going to be a policy document, so more of a text-heavy document, which outlines the direction for Bayfield at a more detailed scale than what currently exists in the Blue Water Official Plan. So where the Blue Water Official Plan would say, these areas are to be residential, the secondary plan might go into more detail about the density in different areas and how that density should be designed. So that's an example of the more detail that we'll go into in this plan as opposed to what you'll already find in the Blue Water Official Plan. The second deliverable is a high-level conceptual plan that's going to show the preferred location of future residential development. Again, we'll have future commercial development. We have existing designations, but maybe they need to shift. Maybe we need more highway commercial areas. Maybe we need a way that we can grow the downtown core. There's different conversations that can be had. We want to think about growth planning. So how are we planning for infrastructure, for streets, parks and trails, natural areas and connections. The idea is with growth, we want to do growth well, and we also want to recognize the fact that we have significant areas of natural environment within our settlement area. And so how do we create some efficiencies from an infrastructure and road network perspective and do that in a way that still considers and respects the natural environment that I know so many value within Bayfield? So the urban design component, I did allude to it, but what was very clear to me as I was sort of helping to define this project in my mind was that what we hear so often is that development doesn't meet the character and the feel of Bayfield. But we've never gone to the real detail of defining what is the aesthetic of Bayfield from an urban design and architectural perspective. The closest that we have to it is our Heritage Conservation District Plan for the downtown core. We also have some urban design guidelines that were developed for the meadows. For some of you who will remember when that development went to the Ontario Municipal Board, urban design guidelines was one of the requirements that came out of that decision. So the goal is that we are going to hire a consultant to prepare urban design policies and a limited number of sketches. Again, our budget is $15,000, so do keep that in mind, which define and depict the key aspects of Bayfield's aesthetic, and those aspects particularly which we want to protect and promote through the secondary plan. So the consultant in this case has been selected as MHBC Planning in partnership with Alan Avis Architect. So again, having a very local connection to the community, and they were chosen again in March of this year. So their original plan was sort of a pre-COVID plan, and there will need to be some adjustments made in terms of how we do the public consultation for this component. What I think is nice about it is that in addition to a lot of maps, when people go to do the consultation, we'll actually have an opportunity to put up some drawings and some photographs of Bayfield and talk about different components and have people be able to comment and give thoughts on different approaches. So I think it will add a really nice visual element to the plan. So I am going to stop there. And maybe again, just pause for a minute to see if anyone has any questions before we go on to some of the more technical aspects of this process. No? Okay. Arlene.
I hate keep butting in. Sorry about that. The one thing that I've noticed about your discussion, do we assume that the paradigm in this exercise is growth and how to manage growth since they've already decided to sort of double the capacity of the sewage lagoon? Are we talking in terms of doubling the population, tripling the population? There is a whole urban planning methodology that calls urban growth oftentimes a Ponzi scheme, right? The existing residents pay for the future development, and you get into that kind of whirlwind. So are we assuming right from day one, everybody's going to talk about, okay, where are we going to put the parking? Where are we going to put the stores? Where are we going to grow? How big are we going to grow? Because my whole goal of sitting in on this is that can I make that? My daughter's going to retire. Both my daughters are going to retire here. Are they going to have a better place to live than we have right now? So is the paradigm growth or is the paradigm better?
I think it's a fair point. I think that this is an urban settlement area. And so in terms of how do we allocate growth, it's true, we do allocate growth to serviced urban settlement areas, of which Bayfield is one. And so I think what Dave is expressing is maybe a question of, you know, how much growth? Is there a limit to the appropriate extent of growth? And then there may be different tools, Dave, potentially. So if what you're saying is that there's certain areas of Bayfield which you would prefer not to see grown, or is it just as a whole you'd rather not to see Bayfield grow?
Denise, Bayfield, the main population center of Bayfield on the south side of the river is geographically limited. It's on a peninsula. It can't grow out into the lake. It can't grow down into Rainbow Valley. It can't grow into the Bayfield River. And the Bayfield Main Street is limited by just geography. So yeah, if you're talking about wedging another 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people into this area, you're not going to grow the old Main Street. You're going to have to grow Bayfield into something totally different. And if that's the discussion we're having, so be it. That's the discussion. Yeah, I've got strong feelings about it, but if you're assuming that you're going to double the population in this place or triple it, think about just the parking issues on Main Street. So as planners, are we talking about where's your parking lots going to come from? How are you going to ferry people to get to the downtown area? Right now on a Saturday, Friday, Sunday, you can't park. Double the population. And that's only assuming that we're doubling the population within that little zone that you showed on the first slide. If they put 200 or 300 housing units into the Salvation Army camp, if Central Huron starts expanding in their Forest Glen area and things like that, we're already talking in summertime a population base that's estimated around 7,000 people. Your paradigm has to be challenged, and you have to discuss it before you set out the trajectory of your program. You cannot build a factory without a parking lot or HVAC. And that's what frightens me about this conversation of expansion without talking about infrastructure. And nobody's acknowledged the fact that you cannot grow Main Street.
Can I just make a comment? Sorry, Denise, before you go on. I feel like tonight is an overview of what the project will look like and what the committee will be responsible for. And I think some of the depth of this conversation will probably come out in further meetings. So with all respect, Dave, to your comments, if we could just maybe focus on the overview and the information that needs to get out to the community members, and some of the depth and deeper part of the conversations will likely come out in further meetings.
Can I speak, please? Growth is inevitable. There's about 3 or 4 9 or 10 acre parcels in the south area of town. We have to plan for some kind of growth. We have people coming. Toronto is coming. I'm one of the first people they see here. It's either that or they're going to start buying these small cottages and knocking them down and putting big ass houses up, for lack of a better word. So we need to plan for some kind of growth. Unfortunately, Dave, I don't think it's the locals that are downtown on the Saturday and Sundays blocking the streets. A lot of those are day trippers coming in, and they support our local entrepreneurs and our restaurants and our businesses. And so we do need that, but we can't just block it off and say, we got to keep this a quaint little village as it is. We can go forward with planning to make it, stay the charming, quaint village with, architectural designs and stuff like that. But, Bud has a sign up on his 10 acres for sale right now. We can't tell these people that they can't sell their property. And once we get sewers in, there might be developers that come along. I think the Meadows has done a great job of keeping the houses in the flavor of Bayfield. They look cottagey. They don't look like they belong in a subdivision in the city, and it's happening, whether you want it to or not. I had someone come visit me from Edmonton that hadn't been here in 10 years, and she couldn't believe that all the stores were filled and all the businesses were open, because 10 years ago, there was a lot of vacancies on Main Street, and you don't want it to go back to that, and there's half our entrepreneurs are young people in their 30s. So, it's unfortunately we can't stop it. So we have to plan. That's why we're planning for it, right?
I think this is great. Good conversation. I might go to Gary and then Andre. I think both had comments they wanted to make. Yeah, go ahead, Gary.
It's an interesting discussion about growth because Bayfield's not going to grow that much. The problem in all of Huron County is we're losing population. And if you go to Hensel or Zurich or Brussels or Blythe, you'll see what happens. Bayfield's a little different. Bayfield's issue is substitution. So commercial development on the outside takes away from commercial development in the core. So what we have is a substitution problem, not a growth problem, because I mean, I've been planning here for 50 years. And when I came to Bayfield in 71, it wasn't much bigger than it is now. And when all of us die, it's not going to be much bigger than it is now.
Exactly.
So that's not the issue, but your issue of people coming in on the weekends or during the summer and how do we accommodate them is a very good question. And the fragility is shown. I know Bayfield is downtown is pretty full, but it has a huge turnover. So businesses come, businesses go, and they go at a lot of rapidity. When you look back 20 years and say, what businesses are here now that were here 20 years ago? There aren't a lot. So we have to be very cognizant during this process of the fragility of Bayfield. Not that it's going to triple, double, or triple. That's not in the cards. No. And it won't ever be in the cards. So that's the view of a planner who's been here for a while.
Thank you, Gary. Andre, just want to move to you before we move on with the discussion.
Yeah, thank you very much. Congratulations, Leanne, on your recent promotion to your position. That's fantastic. It's very important, hugely important position. The world is changing whether we like it or not, and this coronavirus has kicked off a complete transition in the way business is done. I know 5 or 6 VPs that have summer homes in Bayfield, and they haven't been to the city since March, and they have no plans on going back to the city. As a matter of fact, each one of them said to me individually that when they went back to the city to go to their 37th floor office and the corner office, it was a pain because they had to pick everything up from Bayfield and transition it and reset up in the city, and it cost them a week and probably tens of thousands of dollars of revenue. So they're not going home, okay? They're in Bayfield to stay because they're in their 50s and they don't like it in the city anymore. They've been to all the restaurants, they've seen all the shows. They're tired of that. They want this. The question is, what is this? And as we're going through the planning documentation, I'm going to stick just with the planning and the structure of the way this meeting is supposed to be organized, or the way it's been planned out by the Bayfield planners, because I think you've done a fantastic job so far. I noticed that nowhere in the stakeholders group or anybody you're going to talk to was there the marina. Yet when you put the big picture up of what is Bayfield, 50% of it was the marina. There's a lot of Americans that sail over to Bayfield, largest port on this side of the lake. This is a destination, and it's going to become more of a destination because Bayfield has managed to maintain its quaintness, the beauty. I also noticed that nobody talked about fishermen. There's been hundreds of years of fishing heritage within Bayfield, and I think that is a great thing to maintain. So I think that's got to be in the stakeholder group. Those 5 or 6 fishing boats that go out, because everybody I know from the city goes to that fishing shop and they pick up fish from Lake Huron, they take it home to the city and they eat it. That's important. So how do we weave that feel into this whole thing? I'm looking forward to the visioning exercises, what we want Bayfield to look like. Because if we don't be careful with what we're doing, we're going to end up with a Niagara on the lake, which is not a place where people like to live. People like to go and visit, but it's not a town. It's not a place where you want to retire. It doesn't include the stuff that Dave is worried about. So I'm really looking forward to helping and participating in this very valuable exercise. And Elaine, you're absolutely right. That land's going to get sold. And as far as growth in Bayfield staying the same size, It's not going to stay the same size. 30 years ago, Cameron Street was empty, and now it's filled with houses. And that's going to make its way towards the south side. So, you know, this is very important here. And with that new bridge coming through, the traffic's going to speed along that highway. And if we aren't careful, it's going to, you know, there's going to be trucks barreling across there as this whole area gets repopulated because of good internet connections and no need for people to be in the city anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hugely important exercise here.
Yeah.
I'm really, really looking forward to participating. Just excellent, excellent work so far. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andre. We'll go to Roger and then we'll just take a pause for a minute and talk about what's next. So Roger. Oh, if you can just hit unmute there for you.
There we go. I found the hand raise. Yeah, just a quick something to consider. Dave talked about our geographical ability to spread, you know, hemmed in by lake and river and that type of thing. To the north, we've got Central Huron, which is sort of moving on developments too. So we could have some rather large developments, and some are well moving along, I believe, on the Central Huron side, which are in effect Bayfield. So, but we really don't have any control of that design, or don't have any control as to how that impacts the village. So it's just something to put out for discussion at a certain point as to how to handle that. It's a unique situation.
I think it's a great point, Roger. I've certainly made note of that. It's certainly a situation wherein they're growing. They may not be accessing Blue Water's hard services or Bayfield's hard services in terms of our water and our sewer, but ultimately the people who come to live there will be accessing those soft services, you know, the library, you know, the exercise classes, the grocery store. And so there is an impact. So absolutely have made note of that. I want just to be cognizant of the time. We are at 8 o'clock and I do want to have some time for the visioning. So while Arlene gets set up with some of the more technical elements, we're going to go through those really quick. I was hoping everyone could grab a piece of paper and a pen.
So I don't really want to stop this great conversation. So I think we can talk about the code of conduct and the procedure bylaw at another meeting.
Okay. We will provide those documents in the OneDrive link. Take a read through them. We'll provide a quick overview at the next meeting, and should there be any questions, we'll discuss them.
Denise and Arlene, do we need to accept that presentation before we move forward, or are we good to go just into questions?
No,
I just didn't know what kind of rules we were doing here, so.
Yeah, we're good to go.
Okay,
I
awesome.
think we're okay. I think we're okay. Where there's a decision being made, then we would want to have a motion. Okay. So for the visioning exercise, I didn't want to start off this meeting talking about the planning framework and the provincial direction. It's there, it's very important, and yet I really wanted this meeting to hear from yourselves. You've put your time forward, you've lived in Bayfield, you've spent time here, and I want to hear from yourselves. So the 3 questions I'm putting out to you this evening are, number 1, what's going well in Bayfield? Number 2, what areas are in need of attention? And finally, what in 20 years from now, what does success look like to you in terms of what Bayfield looks like in 20 years? So we'll just start with the first question. So what is going well in Bayfield? And I'd like you to write down, if you can, 5 things that come to mind. Whiteboard doesn't seem to be agreeing with me on that second. Okay, so what we're going to do is I've got my note taking up, and just as I'm going to go around my screen and ask for an item, what's going well, and if one of yours has been said, you can just move on and say another, and then we'll come back around again. So, Councillor Irvin, could I start with you? What is going well from your perspective?
I would say the devotion that people have to the two parks, both Pioneer and Clangregor Square, where whenever I drive by Pioneer Park, there's people sitting on picnic tables having lunch, kids in the playground at Clangregor Square. We sure wouldn't want to lose those two beautiful parks.
Okay, thank you. Roger Lewington. I'm just going to go around my screen.
Well, I just add to that, we've got a whole trail system developed. We've got the tree project, which has happened. And I was on Louisa Street today, and I was sort of looking at the trees saying, wow, they've really come along. It wasn't that many years ago, we got some trees planted on Main Street, and they've had a huge growth as well. There's an environmental component to the village where people are concerned about plastics and everything else. Just a few things to add there. I will add the land trust as well, because through the land trust, we acquired the whole flats property through small donations from everybody in the village. So there's more opportunity for growth of the land trust. So as George, I'll be quick, as George mentioned, this is what we have, but the question is, what can we do in the future to double our green space?
Yeah, to enhance it. Leanne, we'll go to you next.
Okay, well, tourism. I mean, people want to visit and they definitely want to spend money in Bayfield. So I think that is going well currently.
Elaine. Oh, Elaine, you're on mute.
I think pre-COVID, like there was a lot of clubs in Bayfield for anybody's hobby that they want to enjoy. There's all kinds of clubs here for anybody to be involved with, and that definitely helps newcomers meet people.
Yeah, that's a great one. John. Oh, John, you're on mute there.
Sorry. Relatively new, but similar to Elaine's comment, probably a little bit more generally, but I guess it was just a sense of community, just the feeling coming new to Bayfield from Toronto 18 months ago was just a sense of community. And again, Elaine pointed to the organizations and the clubs that are around and the support that's there to become part of the community.
Mm-hmm. Great. And Gail.
Well, I think really it's, in a way, it's what Gary Davidson said in terms of growth. And I'm going to the main street. So 40 years ago when I came here, 1981, I think that Main Street, the commercial core, has changed very little since. And I think it was a charming village then, and I think it still is. And that's the way we should grow.
Gail, I would love to talk to you more about what Main Street looked like when you arrived and the businesses. I know obviously of your history and legacy with the Little Inn, but I'd love to chat with you about that more.
Anytime, Denise.
Dave McLaren. Something that's going well.
Well, I look back over the last 20 years that we've been full-time in Bayfield, and from a development point of view, we've had three major developments, two of which I would consider to be medium density, and they've progressed reasonably well. They're all in the south end of town. They don't significantly impact the core heritage district, and they provide a real need for some of our aging population. I've been involved with our Home for Good project for some time now, and affordable housing for seniors is still high on our list. Now we haven't, they haven't all gone smoothly. There've been a couple of OMB hearings, and we have had to fight to maintain reasonable densities, but we managed to reduce the Meadows density by about 30% and get the urban design guidelines in place. So I hope that we'll be able to continue to do that.
Kim.
I'm thinking the sort of, we kind of talked about it earlier, but the various entrepreneurs and how Main Street and elsewhere has attracted them. I think that's going well. And sort of new types of business coming in to the community. I think that's going well too.
Yeah, really great examples. Obviously, the kind of the creative economy with virtual high school, and now Bayfield design, and that sort of tech industry coming into the community. And a really great example of people who truly can work from anywhere. So where do you choose to be? And
Exactly.
chances are, for some people, right, it's not going to be Toronto anymore. So communities like Bayfield, I do think are looking pretty desirable. Abby. Oh, we're still getting that feedback.
That's the problem.
Oh, I'm sorry, Abby. There is the chat function if you wanted to write your thoughts into the chat box at the bottom. Okay, we'll come back. If Abby can get that sorted, then we'll come on, we'll circle right back. Jean Ann, we'll turn to you.
I was going to say the evolution of Bayfield is more of a year-round destination as opposed to just a seasonal, summertime focused place to be. It seems like with the addition of a lot of business from virtual high school and Bayfield design and more of the businesses staying open year-round, that Bayfield's become more of a 365-day destination and not just the warm summer months.
Dave, from your perspective, what is going well?
Bayfield has got one extraordinary difference from any other community I've ever seen, and it's the degree of volunteerism. You look at just about every organization in Bayfield that from Pioneer Park to the River Flats to the arena to the town hall to the playground in Clan-Gregor Square, it was all done by volunteers. I often think of Bayfield as being a bottom-up kind of community. I know the municipality likes to take credit for a lot of the wonderful things that are in Bayfield, but so help me God, you look at the 100 or so people that make this place hum, and it's a really, really special place.
I'm just going to save that so I don't lose any of these great thoughts. My computer decides to betray me. Andre, we'll move to you. Thank you, Dave.
I like the small shops, the small shop feel. I've seen a lot of small towns, as soon as big box gets anywhere nearby, the small shops all disappear, and that hasn't happened here. So I'd like to see that sort of heritage feel, the old growth of downtown be maintained. That's working very well. That's like people drive to be here.
Yeah. So we have Mayor Klopp and Councillor Walden are joining us as participants this evening just to view the discussion. And at the end, we can give an opportunity for them to ask questions or speak. But they're here really just to observe. So if Abby's still having difficulty, we'll move on to Kim Loback.
I can give another one, sure.
Oh, sorry, I've already gone past you, Kim.
Yeah.
We've moved on my screen. That's okay, go ahead.
Let's see. Yeah, I think many of my other ones have been talked about already, but yeah, I think the active community piece is a big one for sure. Like the people that are involved in everything and making sure that all of the different pieces keep Bayfield how we want it to, but also still allow growth. But I feel like that's covered.
Okay. Gary.
Thank you. I was just going to say, it's an interesting visioning exercise. I do planning all over the world, and I always come back to Bayfield because it's my home. And one of the things I like about it is that it hasn't segmented itself into good areas or not so good areas. In that sense, it's a fairly homogeneous community. And, you know, people walk around. I live on the wrong side of the highway. But people walk around here and we talk to them. It's very neighborly. And you don't get this sense you do in other cities that there's a segmentation by income groups. So that's what I like about it. When we're talking about visioning, I'll say something that the late Dwight D. Eisenhower said about planning. The plans are useless, but planning is critical.
Thank you, Gary. Just looking here, so Arlene, we have Councillor Vandenberg with us. I believe that's Deputy Mayor Ferguson there. Jim, is there anyone else I'm missing in terms of committee members? I'll open it up then. If anyone has an item which they hadn't had a chance to say, oh, it is Deputy Mayor Ferguson, hello. If there is, was there anything that we didn't say before we move on to the next question?
Denise, may I say something?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Councillor Walden here. Denise, I'm
Yep.
thinking back to the early 1960s and looking at Bayfield. Was pretty much all gravel roads, septic systems, and people had pumps for their water. We've got beautiful paved roads. We have a water tower on Lake Huron Water, and we have a sewage lagoon that's getting overloaded. But that's an invisible, huge positive thing that Bayfield has that, as municipal councillor, concerns me, the infrastructure of Bayfield to keep the Bayfield supply with those things. And we have it, and it's a really big plus. Thank you.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So I think we'll take a minute. We'll go on to our next question. And Gary, if time allows and you have another question that you would rather see the committee address this evening, I'm happy for a shift. But I would like to talk about areas for attention. And feel free, write down a few when we go through. I'll go in reverse order this time, and we can talk about what are those things that maybe aren't going so well and that you would like to see addressed in the secondary plan or potentially by another tool. As I said, the secondary plan isn't going to be all things to all people. We may need other tools as well, but.
Okay, I'll start with that, okay?
Yeah.
We've been doing planning in Bayfield for 50 years, and by and large, the vision hasn't changed. What has changed is our inability to implement that vision. We do plans, we do policies, we write zoning bylaws, we do site plan control, but by and large, we have not been able to sustain, from an implementation point of view, the vision that has been consistent in Bayfield for at least 50 years. So it's not a matter about getting the vision, it's a matter about what steps do we need to, in fact, make that vision reality. And quite frankly, I mean, I was planning here for 30 years and I couldn't do it. And, you know, if you look at some of the development that's occurred in the village in the last several years, you haven't been able to do it. So the real issue is going to become, can we move this, what should Bayfield be like, into the type of tools that allow Bayfield to be like that?
Kim, going in reverse order this time. What could we do better?
I mean, this will probably be on people's list, but parking is an ongoing piece. So finding a solution that meets that need without having massive parking lots, because I think that, I'm not sure what the solution is, but.
Great. Abby, are you able to join us through the phone now, maybe? No? Okay. All right. Sorry about that. By all means, Abby, email me your thoughts, and I'd be happy to include them in the discussion. Andre, areas for attention.
Areas for attention right now. Every once in a while, I'll get stuck trying to get on the highway from Cameron Street, just to get across. And I think the highway is only going to get busier. And I would like, instead of if something was going to happen, instead of a traffic light, because that's the easiest solution, maybe to investigate a traffic circle, forces people to slow down, but not rev up their engines and create more noise while passing through.
That's a great one. Dave Gillians.
I've got two real quick ones. One is volunteer fatigue. I'm really concerned that sort of the people that are running a lot of the facilities in the village are getting tired and older and probably no longer able to keep up the pace. The other thing that I just want to mention is that I think is a problem is that the fact that the municipality of Bluewater doesn't control the main street of Bayfield. Highway 21 being the main traffic thoroughfare is controlled by the province of Ontario. So things like sidewalk and pedestrian safety and things like that, they have no say in. It's done by a higher level of government, and that's probably one of the few communities in Ontario.
Right, so the opportunity to investigate a connecting link sounds like sort of the suggestion there.
It would be more take over the highway for the main street like they do in Seaforth and Clinton and in Goderich. I believe that all of those communities, for example, the highways are municipally controlled.
Right, yeah, many of our downtowns in Huron County have actually county roads going straight through the middle of them. So Seaforth is an example of that. They're redoing the county road right now through the main street. But yes, where there's an MTO controlled roadway, there's often what we refer to as a connecting link. So I don't want to say that that is possible or isn't possible. I would not begin to say that I would know. So that is something that we can certainly have a discussion with when we speak with our agency partners at MTO. And obviously with Blue Water Council as well. Jean Ann.
I was going to say year-round accommodations for many of the employees of the Main Street businesses, which obviously contributes to the issue with parking since most people are driving here to work.
Great one. Dave McLaren. Oh, Dave, you're on mute there.
I agree with most of what's been said so far. I like the idea of the traffic circle, by the way, because I'm fight that intersection daily. We haven't utilized our harbor very effectively in terms of promoting the harbor for our tourism opportunity. And I think the municipality has an opportunity to take more control of that. We have a privately owned on the north side and federally owned on the south side, and we really don't have a whole lot of control from a municipal perspective on that. And again, we've had lots of comments about not being able to enable the vision, the quality of life versus the growth related issues. So that's a real concern for me, is what happens to our quality of life as we go through this growth phase.
Fair. Gail.
You say Gail?
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Denise. So two things: green spaces and trees and grass and space between all buildings, I think is critical in a country, which is a country atmosphere. Number two, I would really like to have us revisit Gary's vision. I have no idea what it said, and probably no one else does either. I'd like to know exactly what we haven't done, and maybe we should be still doing it.
Well, Gary, this might make you smile. Does this look familiar?
I'm back. The vision has always been to ascend. Yeah, right. Yeah, it's been a while.
I'll stop cheering for a second.
That we've just not been able to move. We've not been able to protect the vision when the chips are down. I think it's several OMB hearings we've gone through. They've been mentioned. We've got some better design guidelines into some subdivisions. We lost miserably on Tim Hortons. Again, a lot of the monster houses going in are not consistent with the vision. And quite frankly, the blame falls on the planning department. They've not been eager to defend the vision that the plans, even the recent plans, have put into Bayfield. So I think one of the things that we're going to have to discuss as we go through here is how does this committee deal with some of the very detailed, quite frankly, zoning regulations that will implement our vision, and not get mesmerized by nice policy words. But, you know, I think we've got the people on the committee that are going to do just that. So Denise, your job's not going to be easy.
That's fine. No worries. Okay. Just working backwards. John, from your perspective, something that needs attention.
People have talked about the highway a little bit, but I think the thing that scares me a few times is just even trying to cross the highway, particularly going from Clan McGregor over to the pharmacy. I think that the whole idea of having a highway with massive trucks coming down right down the middle of town, the safety aspects of that, not just at Cameron Street, but I think the whole stretch of it needs to be thought about, particularly if it continues to grow and that traffic from Goderich down through south continues to grow. You know.
Okay. Elaine.
I think we need some kind of rental building in town, well, in town, like when it develops, or maybe a seniors rental, because a lot of seniors want to sell their home. They can't take care of it any longer, and then they have to leave. They have to go to Goderich or, you know, Clinton, or, you know, we just recently, she has, you know, she's older, she has to go to London, like, but she would like to stay here, but she can no longer take care of her home. So it'd be nice to have some kind of rental building, you know, just because it's a rental, like an apartment building, it can still look like Bayfield. But we need somewhere for seniors to go that they, you know, they've lived here 40 or 50 years, that they don't have to leave the community. And the only thing they've known, and maybe eventually have a, you know, along the highway commercial area, like a medical building that has a doctor in it and a dentist, and, you know, that will help with these seniors be able to stay in the area. That's just where I think that we could do better.
Mm-hmm. Gail had her hand up there. I just thought I might go back to her for 1 second.
Well, we actually did have a building like that, Elaine, the Clan Gregor Apartments.
Yeah.
For seniors, and I think there might be about 20 flats in there. I'm not sure.
Yeah, but there's not, you know what I mean? There's no vacancies.
It's not there now, but it's, that building did not interfere with anything aesthetically or anyway, and it would, there were a lot of people who lived in this village whose moms were living there.
Yeah, and I hope that we can do that again, Gail, just because people don't, we're all getting older. You know, I don't want to have to leave, you know, someday. I would like to stay here. And a lot of people, yes, they've sold and gone to the Muse, but, you know, they're $400,000 now. A lot of people don't want to invest their money in real estate again. They want to live and have a little nest egg that they can live forever on and just pay rent, right? So,
You're absolutely right.
yeah.
Thank you. Leanne.
Oh, hey. So I think really it's the like preserving our heritage, which I think is really important, what needs our attention. And that really speaks to the feeling infrastructure of the downtown core green space that Gail talked about. Mm-hmm. And environmentally, you know, our recycling and our recycling programs are outrageous considering we're a lake community. So I think that all kind of wraps up in a nice little package for the downtown specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Roger Lewington.
Unmute there. Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm in agreement with all has been said. I'll just maybe put it a little bit differently. And that's, we need to really be concerned about the walkability. If you look at one of the core features of the village, it's the walkability. Mm-hmm. And we're trying to maybe expand the walkability in many ways, but we don't want to lose that walkability. And that means connectors. It also ties into Highway 21. MTO is there to move cars as quickly and trucks as fast as they can. We've got this growing artery right through the middle of the village, which tends to split the village in two. And I think we need to somehow look for a way to unify it, make that more of a municipal street, I would say, and that would solve a lot of the other problems that people have talked about. So couldn't be through the Connecting Links program or whatever. So generally speaking, if you talk about attention, I think we need to be very concerned about maintaining the quality of life. Mm-hmm. as we move ahead.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Irvin.
Well, I wish somebody had a vision for the old LCBO building. That needs attention.
Anything that we haven't mentioned? Sorry, I can share screen again so you guys can look. Just look over the list and see as you sort of look here. So a lot that came up about Highway 21. And some of these things are within the land use plan. Some are without, or outside of perhaps. So, you know, something like volunteer fatigue is probably not something that will be addressed well within, you know, the policies and provisions of a land use plan. But I think it's an important consideration, especially when you talk about the people who've spent their time and their hours volunteering for the community, and they're getting older in age. And so it's really connected to that other conversation about, you know, do they have a place within the village, within the built form that meets their needs in the next 20 years? And so I think it's very interesting how it's all very connected. So great to kind of put everything up on the board at this point, and then we can kind of scope it as we move through this process. So the next question, or the last one I asked you to consider, is about, so how would you define success, and sort of you picture Bayfield in 20 years? Maybe there's some growth in some areas, maybe in your picture there's not growth in other areas. What do you see?
Can we just start, or are you going to call us?
No, I mean, this one I'll make it free form. By all means, just Dave, you kick us off.
Well, I think that you know, our motto here is a heritage village on a great lake, and that's what I'd like to see 20 years from now. So I'd like to see a village atmosphere. I'd like to see the lake continue to play a significant role in the life of the village and in the life of the economy. I think it's just that simple.
Like that. Okay. Feel free to jump in. John, do you have a thought there?
Yeah, I guess I'd like to think that the village would still have an identity, as opposed to sort of getting subsumed into some broader identity as just another place. That it does have an identity and has a lot of the things that we talked about in terms of its characteristics. Dave talked about the heritage village, but there are lots of things about the community that are unique, and I think we want to keep that identity as opposed to just another village.
So it's really speaking to that authenticity that you feel when you visit Bayfield today, and wanting to see that authenticity maintained moving into the future.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Roger. Oh, and again, you're on mute.
My apologies. I think a key word is charm. It's hard to define, but I think charm is a very important thing in the village. And in the future, if we were much more walkable in the future, I think that would be great. So the enhanced connectors, ensuring that there's connectors to the beach. I think, if for all commercial areas, why wouldn't they all be covered by the Heritage District? Our Heritage District is 40 years old, so I would not like to end up with something where you've got all this new growth, which is 90% looks like anywhere, and then we've got this little module of heritage downtown. Why don't we just expand heritage as we go? And they're all covered by the same features.
Okay.
I think that would be success. Instead of saving this little microscopic area, and the rest of the area looks like whatever. I think we all know.
That's a great point about the age of the Heritage Conservation District plan. I think that's definitely something that needs to be looked at. We've had major changes to the Ontario Heritage Act, particularly in 2005. And so I would say it's time to review that plan.
Be bold, and let's all make the whole village that way.
So Gary, so looking into the future with the rise of mobility, I think what'll happen is, and what I'd like to see, is that we take parking off Main Street. And so that there would be, maybe start with the weekends, there would be no cars and no parking on Main Street. That would freak a lot of merchants out, but what's happened where that's been done in other places, it tends to actually boost the business because people wander around and they feel more free to shop. So I think that that's what's going to happen over the next 20 years, given the increased emphasis on mobility without cars.
Gary, I don't think
Maybe
that would freak. I don't think that would freak businesses out. I think that they would be very receptive to an open shopping area if there was ample parking that allowed people to walk to the downtown core. I think that it would be a positive.
Just to further that comment by Gary, we all have to be really understanding that the whole idea of gasoline-powered or diesel-powered vehicles is just about is coming to the end of its lifespan. The main street and any parking area that we're going to have to develop in the future is going to have to consider electric vehicles and just the whole change to mobility that we're all going to experience.
I think that climate ready lens is such a great one. I know, Andre, that's an area of that you have some experience working in. I wonder if you might share your perspective.
Yeah, I've been working in climate change since the change of the millennium, and I don't get thrown out of offices anymore. So it's a nice change. Yeah, electrification is coming. Yeah, the age of the internal combustion engine is long gone. If you take a look at all the vehicles in the Oakville Ford plant that will be made there in 5 years, all of them will be electric, nothing gas powered. And most of Europe will be outlawing gas powered vehicles within 5 years. That's a big change, and it's coming here. And my sons ride their electric skateboards more than they ride their cars, and they're a lot faster too. So yeah, my vision for Bayfield 20 years from now, if everything works out, would be that somebody would ride a bike with their family from the south side of Paul Bunyan, park on a paved biking trail through forests, never see anything but trees and green space, to their clean tech job somewhere in Bayfield, then pick up a coffee at a small shop in downtown Bayfield, not a big box coffee shop like Tim Hortons, and then drop it off at their grandmother's while they go to check on a music festival that's happening somewhere in Clan Square, and then go and meet the family for dinner at a much expanded patio because they're downtown, because there's no parking downtown, in a town that's maintained their charm, you know, which means you have to keep the large trees where you can, keep the old growth, and not just replace old growth with a you know a tree that was 15 years old. That kind of thing. Maintaining access to the beach and growing that and promoting that, and maintaining growing the multi-generation capacity of Bayfield. I know there's a lot of older people, but if we could increase the number of younger people and the number of full-time residents all across every level of that's required for a proper economy, then I think that it would be achieved. Yeah. So that's my vision.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would like to just snippet that on the recording. We'll just put Andre on Bang the Table and he can just share that vision with everybody. I think we'd all be happy and we can go home. Just kidding. Andre, thank you so much. That was just incredibly eloquent, and I think just helped to show how many components there are in terms of our day-to-day lives that are affected by the built form, right? And by the opportunities that the built form either provides or doesn't provide when it comes to our general health, the ability to walk somewhere as opposed to having to drive, on our economy and the choices we make in terms of where we spend our dollars, the ability to have a village as you raise your family and your kids and also have parents nearby. So much of that has to do with the built form, and that's what Gary means when he says that planning is critical. So yeah, I've picked the right career for me. I'm incredibly passionate and just really happy to have a group of people that share that same passion. So that was great. Who else haven't we heard from? Elaine, have we heard from you in terms of your thoughts about success?
I agree with what everybody has said, and I loved Andre's vision as well. I just hope that we keep the it factor that Bayfield has. It's hard to describe, but it does definitely, I describe it as charming and quaint. I've been told I sound like I work for Tourism Bayfield when I'm talking to clients and prospective buyers that come to town. I just love it here, and you know, I would like to keep it looking like a heritage village as well, with any new growth in commercial or whatever. Keep the small boutiques, no big box stores type of things as well, because that is what makes Bayfield what it is. It's just the small boutiques, the restaurants, the pubs, the Shop Bite Coffee and all that stuff. So if we can just maintain that, I think that we'll be doing fine.
Okay. I'm just going to stop sharing there. Is there any other thoughts that people are sort of, this is sort of on my mind. I don't want to sort of leave it off the table right now. Anything else coming to mind for people?
I'd just like to go back to the comment that Dave Gillians made earlier on with regard to the definition of the settlement area.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty wacky in terms of the way the village really works. And I think that we really do need to consider trading off a piece of Clinton for some of the areas north of the river. I think we need to include that in our planning, whether it happens or not, or whether it can happen or not. But I think that that's a key component of our planning exercise.
Right. And I mean, by all means, Councillor Irvin or Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, but in 2001, when we had amalgamation, I think, and even prior to that time, there was the village of Bayfield, and then there was a surrounding Stanley Township. And over time, some of the ranges that were originally within Stanley Township became to form part of the Bayfield settlement area. So, for example, some folks will be familiar off of David Street, the former Stanley landfill now forms part of the settlement area. And so that was an example of where we needed to do some planning work around that old landfill, kind of coming in from the township, now forming part of the village. And we need to look at how does that impact future development. So you're right, though, there is an opportunity to look at the study area. I'll put up a map for a second, and I can sort of zoom in and out if that helps people. So just to orient everyone within regards to the boundary between Blue Water and Central Huron. So it is this pink line to the north. So it goes out Jowett's Grove Road. So this is Highway 21, the solid gray line. And the pink line, as you can see, comes up from the marina. It cuts halfway across sort of the Cedar Drive down Jowett's Grove Road, coming along Harbor Court. If I put on an aerial here for a second, this might help to orient people. So we have the condo development here, which is in Central Huron. If we zoom in here, you'll see that the, I'll just let it load for a second. So this is the Docks restaurant and the Docks parking lot. So you can see this part of the harbor is all within Blue Water. And as we come out Bayfield River Road, carriage lanes is included as part of Blue Water, but otherwise the line heads straight south and we follow the river. So for the purpose of the settlement area, or the study area, we had considered Wildwood Line to be the extent of the study area, and everything to the west would be included. And we brought it down, and then Bronson Line was the other piece that we'd used initially. And then it came along the south, along this line here, and ending up into what I believe is Crystal Springs here. So that was the original study area. Any thoughts about areas that should be included or removed?
The area off of Sugar Bush and the whole development around Maxabell Road should definitely be part of the Bayfield settlement area. And just as an aside, Mr. Geminard, who owns Bayfield North Antiques, tells me that from his property to Old River Road has a residential zoning. Just as an aside, if I was a politician in Clinton, I would sure want to have the tax base classified as Bayfield to get the extra revenue. So, as a matter of fact, one of my friends on Orchard Line complained bitterly, and he lives on the other side of the Clinton Road because his property taxes were so high. And he asked the assessor why, and it was because he was within the sort of the shadow of Bayfield, and that's why his taxes were so much higher than his neighbors 10 miles down the road.
Okay. So some of those, yeah, we can certainly have those discussions about, you know, the urban boundary area. I think there's a discussion to be had about, there's a number of areas designated within the settlement area. They're designated residential, but they have significant natural features on them. In 2015, when we had the 5-year review, there was a proposal to recognize those natural heritage features with an overlay. Ultimately, that did not meet with the approval of council, and that was all removed from the 5-year review. That's certainly something that can be discussed, because if we look at the number of acres that are, if you look at the word constrained, though I think that puts it in negative light, but if you look at the number of acres which are designated residential, but in fact are significant natural heritage features, you could remove significant acres from the designated lands, and therefore you may be able to justify an urban boundary expansion to include lands further south. I certainly know Max Obel is served by municipal services, as is Sugarbush, but that's some of the conversation I think that needs to be had as we move throughout this process is, what do we do with those ranges in former Stanley Township that are significant wildlife habitat, that have interior forest and other natural heritage considerations? They're designated residential. Is this a time the community wants to have a discussion about potentially a land use change there?
An interesting comment. You suggested a trade-off between, if you take out the natural heritage stuff, you replace it with other development area?
So it was sort of a comment to respond to the desire to expand the urban boundary down to include additional areas. In order to do that, we would have to provide justification, right? If you have significant lands that are slated for development, so to speak, within your official plan and within your designated growth area, then the question is, why are you adding more area? You have significant vacant lands. The idea is that you would develop those first and then grow from there. So what I was indicating was that when we look at the Bayfield settlement area, there's actually significant lands that really, from many perspectives, aren't well suited to development. And that hasn't been really fully considered, I don't think, in recent planning frameworks.
Okay, thank you.
Gary, do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, my comment is this is 2020. This isn't 1980 or 1990. This is 2020. You take those areas out of development and leave them in natural heritage. And sure, some of the owners are going to scream,
yeah.
but natural heritage is important. Climate change is important. Getting away from cars is important. So what you really want to do is shrink the footprint of the village of Bayfield, not expand it.
Agreed.
One of the things that I find a little disconcerting about this discussion is the focus on growth. We should be focusing on sustainability, not growth. And as I said at the beginning, this is 2020. It's not 1980.
Yeah, and that's very fair. I think the conversation about how do we integrate density is part of that, right? So in that we have, if we look at our land base as a finite resource, which we should, right? To Dave's comment, there may be some value in identifying those areas that have been serviced by municipal services, but they don't necessarily have to come into the urban boundary in order to make that acknowledgement. If we look at the existing study area, if we will, and consider that that is sort of the hard edge, we do not want to see the village go beyond that, then the question shifts to how do we make the most efficient use of the land and the services? And how could we integrate density in a way that doesn't detract from the character and the charm and the feel of the village, but allows a bit of a shift in the built form such that we can reach those sustainability targets?
All I'll say is that this should not be a growth exercise. This should be a sustainability exercise.
Okay.
So does that include, if it's not a growth exercise, is it not, there's not a density issue either? Or there is a cap on density?
I don't think density is ever going to become an issue in Bayfield. If you look at what's happening in Bayfield with these monster homes, is you're getting less density.
Yes.
Lot sizes are getting smaller.
No, it's not.
No?
We have the only 2 small houses left, Gail.
Gail, the what's the Fawn Lane subdivision? Those lots, I think, are an acre. That was the biggest problem with the planning department, was that the lots were too big.
They're 95 by 304
Yeah.
Where's this? Which one is this?
on Fawn Creek Lane.
The Salton subdivision?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're big. You're right.
Yeah, they're 95 by about 304.
That's fine, but there is a possibility that there could be areas where there is not the same amount of green space versus buildings.
Are there sustainability goals?
I would say not well defined at this point, no. And so I think that is a really great piece for the next meeting. I think that sort of helps me to, I think, further define what are some of the questions that we want to go out to the community in the first round of public consultation. So in our next meeting, I think we'll pick up the discussion there about, again, sustainability planning, and actually kind of get some ideas out on the table, maybe a bit less conceptual and a bit more pragmatic in terms of what does that look like on the ground. How does that sound generally to everyone for moving through these next steps? Okay. And the other thing I think, and this will help in terms of when we set some sustainability goals. And then I do think it's important when we start to manifest in our minds, what do we think in terms of sustainability, let's say from a residential standpoint or recreation standpoint, reviewing some of the policies that we have in place today, the zoning provisions and whatnot, and what of those provisions and those policies is serving those sustainability goals, and what is detracting or moving away. And that's certainly something that I can help to provide a bit of an overview and a bit of a, from a staff perspective, here are some things that we think could be shifted. But I really want to lead with what are the goals, and then we'll do more of that. What do we have and what do we need to shift to after we have our goals defined? Okay. Well, it is 9 o'clock. Thank you to everyone. I will turn it back over to our chair to formally close out the meeting. And Arlene, if you have any other instructions for us. Otherwise, moving forward, we're very much going to try to have Arlene provide all email correspondence and all the Zoom invites, so you're not getting it for both of us. So look for Arlene's emails moving forward, and we'll have content from myself as well.
Denise?
Yes.
How are you doing?
I'm good, Mayor Klopp, and yourself?
Would the chair allow me to give a couple comments?
Sure, go ahead, Paul.
Thank you. Yes, I apologize for not getting in a little sooner, and I'm trying to save battery. I'm on my iPhone, so that's why I'm just on voice. But I enjoyed the comments so far. What I heard, it sounds like you have a very dynamic committee. When I saw the list, it doesn't surprise me, the conversations. I just want to touch on one couple little, maybe three things. One, Highway 21. There's no doubt that is an issue. Probably way back when they took 21 off Main Street and curved it they probably thought they were skirting the Bayfield. And so clearly that helped then, and we do need to work on that. One word I heard was connecting link. I'd be very cautious when you use that word. Connecting link, if I was the government of Ontario, I'd be really happy that you'd want to do a connecting link. But connecting link isn't what you want to maybe wish for. I didn't realize what it meant till I was talking to my colleagues in Lambton County and Grand Bend. they're having to come up with a big chunk of money for a bridge that's Highway 21. You talk to the politicians there, and they will, they're envious that we're getting our bridge in Bayfield done at 100% provincial tax dollars. If that was the connecting link, Blue Water would have to come up with a big chunk of money every time it's going to get fixed. Now, does that mean we throw away safety? Of course not. But just keep that in mind as a committee. And if you look at the issues in other areas of connecting links, and thank you, Denise, for bringing up those other villages and small towns, they have county road. So you have your upper and lower tier working together, which probably does help, although the deputy's there and he knows full well the discussions that sometimes happen between the lower and upper tier, and he'll be there to talk about that. But I just really caution you, don't get caught into, hey, let's get connecting link. Trust me, the government of Ontario, of any political party, their staff will be glad to get connecting link. You share a lot of the costs, but trust me, you still have the volume of traffic and still have them say. I'll leave that at theirs as a note. Gary Davidson, Gary, wow, it brings back great memories of the discussions that we've had over the years. I almost want to get on this committee full time. I enjoy your comments. As always, you make us think. But I think there's good ones on that committee that will bring you to come to good points. But good to see you and hear your voice. Also, when we talk about expansion, I don't think we're talking about getting more land designated. A little bit of history back in 2002, the 5-year review. As you know, and Gary will back it up, and Denise too, it gives a chance for people to say, can you put some of my land in changing it without maybe a lot of costs? And everybody and their brother said, hey, do you want to put your land up designated as part of the expansion of Bayfield? And a few of us said, wow, we shouldn't be telling all these farmers that their land should be changed over. Well, but as one guy said, don't worry, the provincial government has a very strong land use policy, and agriculture department will be very much has a say, and they won't allow 75 acres around Bayfield, and I think it was more than that, to just automatically be up for could be zoned residential. As it turned out, the government changed dramatically in 1996, and it was there was nobody there watching the switch. Gary, you can back that up later. And it turned out that all of the land and all those lands came back to us and said, yep, they're all up. It's a lot harder to put the genie back in the bottle. So I'm intrigued with this idea of heritage. And when you look at the bushes that are there, and is there some way we can help to mitigate that? That's wonderful. I don't know how much of the land has been sold to private investors, but certainly that land was allowed to be designated, and it is a lot harder to put back in. So I leave you with that. But there's an example again of politicians. It sounds great sometimes, but wow, they went way too far in that one. You mentioned the new homes and the new houses and Tim Hortons. You do zone areas for residential. This is why Denise is working with you to try to get a plan and how it looks. But you allow people to build, then there could be buildings there. In Tim Hortons' case, I make no bones about it. The politicians that you had could have played that card a whole lot different. Maybe Tim Hortons would still be there. I don't know, but I know I've had enough experience from all sides to know that could have probably been, it definitely could have been handled differently with the rules, but it wasn't. But that's the price we have to pay, and we'll have to live with it. So it is very important what you're all doing tonight and starting tonight. I wish you all well. Your local council will of course listen and try to make it and work to make it better for that sustainability. I love what you talked about. about in 20 years, we want to see Bayfield be as great as it is now. That's the goal. That's why we all stick around here and live here. And we'll do all we can to work with you. Denise, good luck in your work. We look forward to your enthusiasm and as we go forward as a council. Thank you.
Just one little bit of history. Bayfield tried to get Highway 21 through the village designated as a connecting link. But as you probably know, 21 is a limited access highway, and the province wouldn't have anything to do with it. In fact, and Dave McLaren will know this, the BRA even tried to get the speed limit dropped down to JD's to 50 kilometers an hour, and they wouldn't even listen to that. So that's probably something that's we're not going to be able to do, but still we have the issue of the safety crossing the highway.
If I may allow, Gary, back to you. Thank you. And I hear you, but I've also been around politics enough to know that you can get things done. There's a little pavement. If anybody drives into Zurich, you'll see some pavement along the highway there that goes to the rest home.
Yep.
In 1988, I was honored to be elected to Hay Council, and a resident of the seniors home asked if we would get that paved, and that was MTO, and that was in the good old days of the good old governments we talk about, and they said no, and then it just happened. A certain fella got elected here, and a new government. Maybe it was helped that you were involved, Gary. But I was approached again by the same guy that said, Paul, really that should be paved. Lo and behold, was told no. But you know what? If politicians say that there's going to something happen, it's amazing. The road got paved without it being taken over by the lower tier. So I have firm belief that we can nail it.
And then we didn't.
No, we didn't. No, but I think we have a real good argument with health and safety without having that connecting link argument. That's all I'm saying. I am full doubt that we can do things to get things done. There's a political will, and you guys are going to help do that. And but just let's not get accidentally caught up that we have to pay for bridges down the road 25 years from now or 30. That's all I'm saying.
Excellent.
Okay. Thank you, Paul, and furthermore, Gary, for that little lesson in history and the positive comments from Mayor Paul. Denise, did you have any further comments before we say goodnight?
No, I think that's fine. I think that we will upload some materials to the OneDrive account, including the presentation from this evening and those other materials we mentioned. And we will get the date of the next meeting out well in advance so everyone can get that in their calendars.
Awesome. I'd just like to thank Denise and Arlene for facilitating the meeting tonight, and for the volunteers. I think we have an expansive expertise, so I think it'll be exciting and informative. So thanks, everybody.
So if we could just have a motion.
Oh
to
yeah,
adjourn
that's
then.
important. Can we have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved, and thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. A seconder, all in favor?
You
All
don't
right.
need I don't think you need a seconder for an adjournment, do you?
I don't know.
In our procedure bylaw.
Okay,
yes,
perfect.
That's
See,
fine.
I'll get it right eventually. Okay, thanks guys. We'll see you soon.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Pleasure
Take
meeting
care,
you.
guys.
Denise.
Good day.
Good job, Denise.
Thank you.